Grace Monroe, a 66-year-old retired middle school art teacher, finds herself in a precarious situation with her daughter-in-law, Heather, and son, Daniel. Initially believing that raising children is about passing down love, Grace realizes that sometimes it involves preparing for self-defense against their schemes. Heather's actions epitomize this realization, as she moves her parents into Grace's master bedroom without prior consultation, treating the decision as a casual announcement. Grace, who had moved in with Daniel and Heather to help care for their son, Lucas, and manage the household, feels marginalized and disrespected. The home, which Grace and her late husband had worked hard to buy, now seems to be under Heather's control. Heather's subtle disdain and manipulation are evident in her interactions with Grace, such as critiquing Grace's cooking while ordering unhealthy food for Lucas or mocking Grace's outdated reading glasses. Grace, ever the peacekeeper, initially swallows these indignities to maintain harmony and not burden Daniel. However, the final straw comes when Heather moves her parents in without any regard for Grace's space or feelings. Grace, feeling like an intruder in her own home, quietly packs a suitcase and leaves, determined not to return to her role as an unpaid nanny and financial supporter. Grace's departure is not just a physical exit, but also an emotional one. She recognizes that her sacrifices in giving have not earned her the gratitude or respect she deserved. Instead, she has been taken advantage of by Heather, who views Grace's contributions as a means to her own ends. Grace's story highlights the complexities of family dynamics and the importance of setting boundaries. Her decision to sell the house and seek legal advice underscores her resolve to reclaim her life and dignity. She realizes that her role as a mother and grandmother does not mean she has to tolerate disrespect and manipulation. In conclusion, Grace Monroe's narrative is a powerful reminder of the need for self-respect and the courage to stand up against exploitation. Even within one's own family, her journey from self-sacrifice to self-assertion is a testament to the strength and resilience of older women who refuse to be marginalized or taken for granted. Grace, you're home. Come say hi. My parents are here. It's going to be so fun having the whole family together under one roof. Then, she added, like it was an afterthought soaked in fake concern, I already moved your stuff into the guest room. Figured we'll let my parents have the master. They're light sleepers, you know, and the master's quieter. Plus that big balcony. So much sunshine it'd be great for their health. This wasn't a conversation. It was a decree. I didn't even look at her. My eyes drifted past her to the master bedroom, now partially closed. I saw the edge of my old vanity table, one I'd used for over a decade now, crowded with unfamiliar trinkets and knick-knacks. The houseplants I'd lovingly raised dead for 5 years shoved into a corner in their place. Some plastic potted monstrosity, tacky and lifeless. My old books, the family photo albums, the keepsakes my husband left behind, stuffed unceremoniously into the cramped guest room like junk you shove into the attic. Out of sight and out of mind, the space reeked of displacement. Everything I cherished was reduced to clutter, discarded, replaced, forgotten. Daniel stood behind Heather, his eyes starting everywhere but toward me. He rubbed his hands together, opened his mouth once or twice, then finally muttered, Mom, Heather. She meant well. Meant well. What kind of twisted kindness pushes someone out of their own room, treats them like a guest in their own home, and does it all with a sweet smile? The chill I felt ran from the soles of my feet to the top of my head like I'd been doused in ice water. At the same time, slow, searing rage began to rise inside me like a branding iron pressed deep into my gut. But I didn't explode. I inhaled slowly, then exhaled. Stay calm, Grace. Argue with Heather, she just. Turn around and cry to everyone about her petty, uncultured mother-in-law. Fight with Daniel. He was already fully under her thumb. Wouldn't even raise his voice. In my defense, all it would do is make me look pathetic. And I knew if I went down that path, this house would become a battlefield, and I'd be the only one wounded. I slipped my arm out of hers, looked Heather square in the eye, and said, with all the emotion of a weather report, got it. Then I turned and walked into the guest room. The door felt like it had turned into a wall, a silent, solid divide between me and the new owners of this house. Outside, I could hear Heather and her mother laughing, their voices like drills in my ears, chirping about curtain colors and hanging chairs for the balcony, and whether they should plant some herbs out there, as if the room had always been theirs, as if I had never existed in it. Inside chaos, My clothes were tossed haphazardly on the bed. My husband's favorite books were crushed beneath a heap of wrinkled fabric, the pages curling at the corners. A photo frame lay face down on the floor. One corner of the glass cracked in the picture. He and I were young again, standing in the spring sunlight, his smile as warm and effortless as the season's first bloom. My heart broke like that glass, but silently Daniel followed me in. He hovered at the door like a scolded child, unsure what to do with his hands. "Mom, please don't take it the wrong way. Heather really didn't mean anything by it." His voice was shaky, low, almost apologetic. I didn't look at him, said quietly, "You don't have to explain. I understand." Of course I understood. I saw everything. Heather's calculated moves, her utter disregard for me, for the woman who owned this house. Daniel, my son, so spineless, so passive, so unwilling to defend me. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't draw a line. He didn't say the one sentence I needed most. The real heartbreak wasn't being kicked out of my room. It was knowing my own son stood by and let it happen. Something in me shut down right then, froze solid. It's not that I don't know how to fight, how to stand my ground. I just didn't want to anymore. Because once your heart dies a little, so does the will to struggle. The greatest distance in the world isn't death. It's when your own child stands in front of you and can't say, "Mom, this is your home." That afternoon, Heather took her parents out to explore the neighborhood and make a Costco run. Smiling like she won the lottery, Daniel said nothing about where he was headed, but I imagined he'd gone to some cafe. To avoid it all, I closed the door behind me and began packing. I didn't take much, just the essentials. My ID, important documents, a few pieces of jewelry. In that photo, in the cracked frame, I wrapped it in a soft towel and tucked it gently at the bottom of my bag. Cloth toiletries. I left them, let them have it all. After all, they had no idea what was coming next. I pulled out my phone and dialed my sister. Rosa, can I ask you for a favor?" I kept my tone as light as I could. "You remember that cleaning service you mentioned a while back? Do you still have their number? I'd like to hire someone reliable to do a deep clean on my old place in Oakland. I'm planning to move back." There was a pause on the other end of the line, just a second or two before her voice came through, tinged with concern. "Grace, are you okay? Did Heather say something again? Did you two have a fight?" "It's nothing serious," I said, pausing. "I just want a quieter place. For a while." I didn't say more. Some things don't need to be shared, not even with your own sister. Airing your family's dirty laundry only spreads more worry. After we hung up, I immediately called the cleaning company and booked a full service for the next day. Once everything was set, I zipped up my old suitcase and quietly walked out of the bedroom. As I stepped into the living room, Heather and her parents burst through the front door, all smiles, carrying bags of fruit and snacks from their shopping trip. Heather paused when she saw me with the suitcase, but only for a heartbeat, before flashing her usual plastic smile. "Grace, heading off on a little trip, going to stay with Rosa for a bit." Her voice was sweet, but her eyes betrayed her. There was a flicker of triumph there, the kind of smug satisfaction that said, "See, you're leaving just like I planned." He thought I was sulking, that I needed a few days to cool off, and once I had, I'd slink back, tail between my legs, ready to serve again. A misunderstanding, a few fake apologies, and things would go back to how they were with me, back in my corner, quiet and compliant. What a joke. I didn't even bother to look at her. I turned toward the entryway and started changing my shoes. "Mom, are you really leaving?" Daniel's voice startled me. I hadn't even noticed him come in. He rushed toward me, panic written all over his face, one hand halfway extended, but Heather gave him a subtle glance, a quiet warning, and just like that he stopped paralyzed, eyes flickering back and forth like a man torn in half. In Heather's gaze, I saw only contempt and certainty. "Where do you think you'll go? You've got no money, no support. You'll come crawling back. And when you do, well, decide what's left for you." I almost laughed. People like her never stop pushing. You give an inch, they take the whole road until you're pressed up against the edge with nowhere left to step. There's no point arguing with people like that. Logic won't change them, only reality will. I didn't answer anyone. I didn't respond to their fake concern. I opened the door and stepped out, leaving behind just one sentence. "I'm going back to my own home. You can manage things from here." And with that, I walked out. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing away Heather's brittle smile and Daniel's useless panic. Downstairs, The cab was already waiting. I slid into the back seat and watched the streetlights blur past as we pulled away. I didn't feel sad, not even close. What I felt was something rare and weightless, like I had finally set down a burden I'd been carrying for far too long. When your heart's been broken long enough, there's nothing left to break. There comes a time in life when pain doesn't bring tears anymore, just quiet and clarity. This wasn't an escape, it was an awakening. The house I was returning to sat in an older neighborhood on the west side of Oakland. It had been part of a housing benefit when I was still teaching, and I later bought the deed outright. It wasn't big, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, but the location was good. The neighborhood quiet, the neighbors familiar. Most important of all, it was mine, completely, truly mine. Of course, no one had lived there in years. The dust was thick, the air stale with a musty dampness. The moment I opened the door, the smell of old paper and closed windows hit me like a wall, but I didn't mind. It was still the only place I wanted to be. The next day, the cleaning crew arrived right on time. They spent the entire afternoon scrubbing every surface, wiping down every corner, even vacuuming the dust out of the window, down sills until the whole place gleamed. I opened every window in the house, letting sunlight and fresh air flood in, chasing out the years of mustiness and shadows that had settled in from disuse. The familiar furniture was still there, waiting quietly in its old spots. The styles were outdated, the edges worn, but every scratch and dent carried a memory of me and my late husband. This was my home, a place that belonged to me, and no one could shove me out of it. No Heather with her sugary smiles, no intrusive in-laws acting like royalty, no suffocating manipulation disguised as family care. I began setting the room up again, piece by piece. I placed my husband's photo on the nightstand right where it used to sit, the orchid they had cast aside. I gently moved it to the sunniest corner of the balcony, and just like that, my life started to feel like mine again. I signed up for an oil painting class at the local community college, something I'd wanted to do for years. I made plans with a few retired friends, morning walks by the lake, coffee dates, conversations about everything and nothing. The air felt crisper, the laughter felt real. Even walking felt easier. Tonight, I brewed a cup of chamomile tea, flipped on an old movie, or read a few pages from a novel I'd never gotten around to finishing. When I got tired, I went to bed early and slept through the night. The insomnia that had plagued me for years faded. So did the tight ache that used to sit in my chest like a stone for the first few days. Daniel called a few times. His voice held the same nervous energy of a schoolboy trying to test his teacher's patience. "Mom, you doing okay over there? But when do you think you might come back for a visit?" My answer was calm, but firm as stone. "I'm doing just fine at my own home. You take good care of Lucas." Every time I said something like that, brief unshakable once, twice, 3 times. Eventually Daniel started to understand, or maybe Heather gave him the look. The calls tapered off, then they became rare. Eventually, all that remained were the obligatory holiday texts, "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom," or the occasional dry, "How's your health?" I didn't mind. I used to think that happiness in old age meant seeing your children happy, that their well-being was your reward. But now I knew real happiness is having money in your pocket, peace in your heart, silence in your ears, and most importantly, freedom from people who think they own you. Here in this little house, my life was still, and stillness had never felt so good. Heather, though, clearly wasn't coping well. Her grand scheme had banked on me crumbling. She counted on the loneliness, the inconvenience, the little headaches of daily life piling up, until I ran back to them, willing, desperate, ready to serve again. But a month passed. I didn't go back. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for a single thing. Her trap had sprung with no prey inside. At first she sent Daniel to try his hand at coaxing me, soft as a cloud, full of concern and guilt. I stayed steady, unmoved. Then finally, she cracked. He called me herself. From the very first word I heard it, that breathy, syrupy tone of hers, the one she used when she was trying to play sweet grace, "We're just a little worried, you know, with you living alone and all Lucas asks about you every day." I replied with a faint, non-committal, and nothing more. There was a pause on the other end, and then her tone shifted just slightly, but enough. A tiny thread of impatience, barely restrained, crept in. "Grace, you know, ever since my parents moved in, expenses have gone way up. When you were here, at least you helped out. But now you're living alone, nice and easy, and meanwhile we're over here trying to manage everything ourselves. There was the tail of the fox finally sticking out from under the velvet curtain. Heather kept up her routine, soft-voiced but sharp as ever. My dad's like, the doctor says he needs long-term physical therapy. It's not cheap. And Luke asked music lessons. His teacher wants the new semester's tuition by next week. Things are really tight at home right now. I listen, lips curled in a faint smile. She was circling carefully, but the target was obvious. Money. My voice was even. Is that so then? I guess it's time you two sat down and worked out a proper budget. Silence. Heather clearly hadn't expected that response. She choked on her next words, her tone stiffening. No, Grace, you've got a good retirement income, right? Maybe, just for now. Could you help us out a little? Or family? After all, we should look out for each other. Family. I repeated the word slowly, letting the irony hang in the air. The day your parents moved in, who was it that kicked me out of the master bedroom? Who shoved my belongings into a storage closet and smiled while saying the master's better for the elderly? Funny how no one mentioned we're family then. I wasn't going to dance around it anymore. I laid it all out, plain and sharp. Heather, my pension came from a lifetime of hard work and sacrifice meant for me. Only me. You, too, had the nerve to move your parents into my home behind my back. Then you deal with it. You made the decision. You live with the consequences. But don't look to me to cover the bill. Before she could say another word, I hung up. I let out a long breath to them. I wasn't a mother anymore. I was a bottomless 18, always accessible, always agreeable, always expected to give with a smile while this machine was officially shut down for everyone but me. And when sweet talk failed, Heather did what Heather does best. She switched tactics. She started pulling strings behind the scenes. A few days later, I got a string of phone calls, one after another, all from so-called relatives. First came Daniel's aunt, all self-righteous and dramatic. The moment I answered, Grace, what's going on with you? I heard you stormed out. What are you thinking? Living alone at your age. Daniel and Heather are doing their best. You're the mother here. You should take the high road. Don't stoop to bickering with your daughter-in-law. Then came my niece, Anna. Her tone was softer, more cautious. Aunt Grace, Daniel told me what happened. Heather may have made some missteps, but don't take it too hard. Okay, your family talk things through. We're just worried about you living on your own. Nice words, but the message was the same. I was being difficult, petty, maybe even selfish. First I felt a tight, familiar knot in my chest. Then I started to laugh quietly, bitterly. They all been fed Heather's version of the story. Not one of them asked Sked what really happened. They didn't want the truth. They just wanted the mother to do what mothers are expected to do. Swallow her pride. Let it go and come crawling back. I didn't bother arguing to those who truly seemed concerned. I simply said, thanks for checking in. I'm doing well. Just needed my own space. But for the ones clearly running Heather's script, I didn't hold back. She's having a hard time. You think I had it easy? He wanted to take care of her parents. Fine. She used my house to do it. Moved them into my bedroom. And now she wants my money too. If you think she's such a saint, you go ahead and pay her bills. My money didn't fall from the sky. After a few of those calls, the chorus of peacemakers started to fade. Looked like Heather's little PR campaign flopped. But the whole episode reminded me of something important. I couldn't afford to just react anymore. Words carry weight, especially when they're twisted and spread behind your back. If Heather ever decided to go full-on manipulative, she could easily poison more ears, rewrite the story until I looked like the villain. And I wasn't about to let that happen. I needed to move strategically, proactively. So I began to prepare quietly, methodically, one piece at a time. First, I pulled out my old phone and scrolled through months of texts from Heather, message after message. The same theme ran through subtle complaints about how I wasn't generous enough, thinly veiled hints that I should be paying for this or covering that. I took screenshots of every single one, saved them in a folder labeled. Then I called an old neighbor from the block where my Oakland house stood. We made small talk, and I casually asked, the house must feel lively since I moved out. Must be quite the scene over there these days. She didn't even hesitate, lowering her voice like someone passing on neighborhood gossip. She told me everything. Heather apparently had a habit of complaining about me in public, right in front of the building. To anyone within earshot, she's still holding on to that house. She say, It's going to be ours eventually. Anyway, she seemed to forget the golden rule of nosy neighbors. Someone's always recording. It didn't take long before a few voice clips showed up in my inbox. Her tone, her words clear as glass. I also rang up an old friend of mine, a retired family lawyer. She had handled enough cases involving elder abuse and financial exploitation to know the terrain. I told her I wasn't planning to drag this into court. Not yet anyway. I just needed to understand my rights, my leverage. I needed clarity in my head and cards in my hand. They came after me again. If they tried to smear me, I would be ready. I wasn't some naive old woman who had never seen the world. By the start of the second month, things began to unravel, just as I'd expected. Without their live and made in 24/7 bank account, Daniel and Heather's carefully curated life began to crack. The bills piled up. I wasn't there to quietly pick up the pieces anymore. Heather kept spending like nothing had changed. Designer handbags, spa appointments, private sessions with her personal trainer, and having her parents under the same roof. That wasn't the free ride she imagined. The old couple were strict, routine, bound. They ate bland food, went to bed early, and had little tolerance for her lifestyle. Heather liked to binge reality TV at full volume late into the night. Her dad was up at dawn, pacing loudly through the hallway. Tensions rose fast. She started snapping, complaining that their food tasted like hospital meals, rolling her eyes at their constant nagging about waste, the bags, the Botox, the tout. At first she bit her tongue, then she stopped pretending altogether. Are you guys here to visit or just here to drive me insane? She snapped one night loud enough for the neighbors to hear. She even started picking fights with Daniel, shouting about being trapped in a mental ward and about to lose it. Daniel, he was cracking under the pressure until one evening there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find my son looking like a ghost. Dark circles under his eyes, hair matted, t-shirt wrinkled like a used napkin. I let him in. He collapsed onto the couch like someone who hadn't sat down in days. His eyes were red. His voice wavered. Mom, I can't do this anymore. He spilled everything. Heather's temper, her impossible parents, the money problems, the stress, the insomnia, and finally, with a crack in his voice that nearly broke my heart, he pleaded, can you come back just to help for a little while? Or maybe lend us something? Anything, we're falling apart. For a moment, something old stirred in me. A flicker of maternal instinct. He was still my son. I had raised him, loved him, believed in him, but that flicker didn't last long. It was smothered by a deeper, colder ache, disappointment. I poured him a glass of water and waited until he drank it. Then I spoke quietly but firmly. Daniel, your life is the one you chose when your wife moved her parents into my home without asking. When she shoved me into the guest room like I didn't matter. If you had said even one word, just one word to stop it, this wouldn't be happening now. You chose silence. You chose to back down. So now you get to choose what to do with the consequences. I paused for a moment, letting my eyes rest on Daniel's frozen expression. Then I added, slowly but firmly, as for money, don't ask me again. Go home and tell your wife this. My money is for me and me alone. Don't expect another dime. Ever. Daniel's lips trembled like he wanted to respond, to plead, maybe to protest, but no words came. He just sat there, head bowed, like a man who lost everything on a bad bet. I knew my words cut deep, but some things need to be said sharp, clear, and without apology. Compassion in the wrong hands is a disease, especially when it's handed out to people who see you as a bottomless well, who only step closer to draw more from you, who see every act of kindness not as grace but as obligation. The more you give, the more they take, until there's nothing left of you but dust and silence. Daniel needed to wake up. I closed the door behind him and stood there for a while back, pressed against the wood, letting out a long, slow breath. Yes, my chest felt heavy, but under that weight was something else, something steady, something fierce, clarity and resolve. For the first time in a long time, I knew exactly what I needed to do, not for them, for me. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Hello, Tom. It's Grace. About what we discussed last time. I've made up my mind. I want to move forward with the will revision. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear his hesitation, the careful pause of someone weighing words. Are you sure? Grace, I know you've been uncertain. Daniel is your only child after all. My response came quick, unshakable. I've made my decision. Some people and some mistakes aren't worth waiting around for. Tom didn't argue. His voice immediately shifted into his professional tone. He walked me through the legal steps for amending my will, the documents I'd need to prepare, the language that would make it airtight. After we hung up, I sat on my couch in the warm, quiet light of my Oakland and just stared at the room. For a long time, everything around me was simple, but it was mine and what I owned. It wasn't nothing. 2 homes. One was this modest but well-located apartment in Oakland worth over $300,000. The other was the house Daniel and Heather lived in, now in Berkeley, a bigger property, close to $750,000 in market value. Add to that nearly $100,000 in savings, plus annuities and long-term investment accounts. My and my late husband's lifelong savings. I had never, not once, thought any of it would go to anyone else. Daniel was my only child. Who else would I leave it to? But now everything had changed. Daniel's weakness, Heather's greed, their combined disregard for me. Little by little, they had eroded the foundation of love and trust I'd built over a lifetime. Leave them all this. I could already picture how they squander it. New cars, designer bags, the latest iPhones, and a lifestyle that always needed more and more and more. I could even imagine the two of them turning on each other, fighting over who got what, how to split the cash. Me, after they finished inheriting everything, they probably wouldn't even bother to buy a headstone, though I wouldn't let it happen. Not after everything I'd lived through, not after everything I'd earned. The next morning, called Tom again. I have one more decision, I said. I want to sell the Berkeley house, the one they're living in. By noon, we met at his office. He placed the authorization contract in front of me. I read it carefully, then signed my name, one letter at a time. No shaking hand, no second thoughts. Legally, you have full authority to sell that property, Tom said, slipping the papers into a folder. They have no claim. You're the sole owner, and I'll personally oversee every step of the transaction to make sure they can't interfere. I nodded slowly, and for the first time in a long while I felt it relief, the kind that settles deep in your chest like a stone finally laid to rest. That afternoon, Tom and I drove over to the Berkeley property and went straight to the property management office. I'm here to retrieve the spare keys, I told the manager calmly, handing over my ID, a copy of the deed and an official letter from Tom, and I'd like to remove Daniel Monroe and Heather Monroe from the registered occupant list. The manager looked through the documents, eyebrows lifting slightly. Do they know you're selling the house? I gave a faint smile. They will very soon. Telling them would have been a courtesy. Not telling them that was my right. That night, I contacted a reputable local real estate agency and listed the house at a fair market price. The agent they sent was a sharp, no-nonsense woman who worked fast when she found out I was the sole owner. No mortgage, no co-signers. She had the photos, walk-through video and listing up within 48 hours. Everything handled with precision. This place won't stay on the market for more than a month, she said with a confident nod. I want it gone quickly. No loose ends, I told her. He grinned. Owners like you are my favorite kind. On the 9th day after listing, the first showing was scheduled. It was a bright Saturday afternoon. The agent arrived with a young couple, eager first-time buyers, and they stepped into the house I had once poured my entire heart into. Heather happened to be home that day. First, she just hovered near the hallway, watching with narrowed eyes. He probably assumed they were friends of the neighbors just visiting, until the agent raised her voice slightly in the kitchen, speaking with a cheery pitch. This property is in a prime location. No liens, fully owned, motivated seller. It's a perfect starter home for a young family. Heather's face dropped. Who are you people who gave you permission to be here? She barked, rushing into the living room, planting herself squarely in the middle. The agent, momentarily surprised, quickly recovered. She pulled out the signed authorization letter and responded calmly. We're here on behalf of Miss Grace Monroe. She's the sole registered owner of this property. We have keys, and management has verified access. Heather's voice pitched higher. What the hell are you talking about? We're living here. The couple looked stunned. The woman leaned toward the agent, whispering, Is everything okay? But the agent was a seasoned pro, unshaken, steady. Everything's fine. The title is clear. There's no lease or tenant hold. This is a standard showing. Heather's complexion changed like a storm, pale, then flushed, then splotchy green. With rage, She yanked out her phone and started dialing furiously, no doubt calling Daniel. Meanwhile, curious neighbors began to peek out from their balconies and doorways. Word traveled fast in that community, and now the rumors were confirmed. Grace is really selling the place. The very next afternoon, I got the call from Daniel. His voice was tight and panicked. Mom, is this some kind of misunderstanding? Are you seriously selling the house? No misunderstanding, I replied, light as air, but we're still living here. Can't you at least think this through? What about Lucas? Your grandson's growing up here. You said it yourselves. It was temporary, I said evenly, so stay until closing, then move. I'm already in second-round negotiations. You should probably start looking. There was a long silence, then he murmured, barely above a whisper, Heather's losing it. I didn't respond. They should have lost it a year ago. Not now. On the third week, the agent called Grace. She said, we've got a solid offer. Full down payment. Cash buyer ready to close fast. Do you want to lock it in? Yes, I said without hesitation. The day the buyer came to sign, Heather finally snapped. She was waiting at the entrance of the neighborhood, blocking the real estate agent and the young couple, with tears streaking down her cheeks and panic in her voice. We've lived here for so long. How could you sell the house out from under us? She even called the police, screaming about malicious eviction. The officers showed up, took one look at the deed, then one gave a curt, emotionless reply. This is private property. The registered owner has the legal right to sell. You're not tenants. You're not on the title. You'll need to vacate. That was when her face finally crumbled. Daniel showed up not long after trying to pull her away. She shoved him off and screamed, where were you this whole time? Your mother's made up her mind to throw us out. I didn't show my face. I had Tom serve them the official notice instead. It was short and sharp. This property has been sold. All non-title occupants are required to vacate within 2 weeks. Failure to comply will result in legal action for forcible eviction. This wasn't revenge. It was consequence. They pushed me out of the master bedroom and into the corner. I simply returned the favor by showing them the door. Heather's drama had played long enough. It was time for her to exit the stage. A week before closing, she still wouldn't give up. She showed up at my doorstep with Daniel. It was a harsh, bright morning when I opened the door. They stood there at the foot of my steps. Daniel looking hollowed out, Heather hiding behind oversized sunglasses, her lips clamped tight. Can we talk? Daniel asked softly, like a child waiting to be scolded. I didn't invite them in. I stood in the doorway, hand gripping the doorknob like it was a boundary. I wasn't about to let them cross. Heather pulled off her sunglasses, revealing red puffy eyes. Her voice was strained. Brittle Grace, we really don't have anywhere to go. We were wrong. Okay. Just think about Lucas. He's used to this house. At least let him stay. He'll move out. Just let the kid stay where he feels safe. Her tone was pleading, her face the picture of humbled regret. She even let 2 fat tears roll down her cheeks like she was finally ready to repent. Maybe months ago, that would have worked on me. Not anymore. You're 2 fully grown adults, I said evenly. Don't tell me you can't find a rental. This isn't about Lucas needing a home. This is about you not wanting to face the consequences. Heather bit down hard on her lip. The cracks in her performance began to show. So you're really going to be this heartless? She hissed. I looked her straight in the eyes, voice like glass. Heartless, I repeated. Was it heartless when you moved your parents into my house and shoved me into the guest room without a word? She said nothing, just turned silently toward Daniel. He swallowed. His voice was barely audible. Mom, you used to say all you wanted was for us to be happy to be together. I nodded. I did say that. But right now, your together doesn't include me. What you're looking for isn't a mother. It's a backup plan, a housekeeper, an emergency fund, and I'm done playing those roles. I reached to the side and pulled out a sealed envelope. This is the formal letter from Tom. The property sale has closed. The title now belongs to the new owners. You have 5 days to vacate. If not, the buyers will file for forced removal. Daniel took the envelope and stood there dazed, like he'd just been handed a verdict. Heather's mask dropped completely. You're so cruel, she snapped, voice shrill. Just wait when you're old, sick, alone. Let's see who's there for you. I met her glare with calm, level eyes. I'd rather grow old alone than stand in a house full of family who treat me like an ATM until there's nothing left. I paused, then added one final note. Don't worry, I won't need you. I've already made all my plans for retirement. Heather said nothing else, just turned and slammed the car door so hard the windows rattled. The engine screeched to life, tires screeching like an angry child throwing a tantrum. Daniel sat in the passenger seat. He didn't even look back after that day. I never got another call from Daniel. No more half-hearted check-in voicemails from Heather, either kind, laced with fake concern and hidden agendas. Just a brief text from my realtor. They've started packing, but it's clear they have nowhere to go. They're asking if you consider postponing the handover. I replied with 2 words, absolutely not. Friday morning, I received a call from the buyer's attorney confirming the moving crew was scheduled to arrive the next day. If the house isn't vacated, he said plainly, we'll initiate formal proceedings for forcible removal. I hung up and sat by the window for a while, watching the old locust tree outside sway gently in the wind. That tree had seen many seasons come and go. Now it stood as witness to the final cleansing of mine. By noon the next day, the neighborhood group chat lit up. Daniel's wife is outside yelling at the movers. I heard Grace finally sold the house. Told you, nobody gives away a house like that for free. One neighbor even filmed a short clip and sent it to me. There Heather was stomping around the sidewalk in a pair of completely inappropriate high heels, shouting at the movers, "Be careful with that box that has my skincare in it. Don't touch that cabinet." I said, "Don't touch it." Daniel sat crouched by the wall on the phone, pale and defeated, surrounded by half-sealed boxes and scattered clothes. Lucas sat silently with a small dog in his lap, watching everything unfold without a word. As for Heather's parents, the very same ones who had once lounged smugly in my master bedroom, they were now crouched in the hallway, trying to tape up a few old chairs. Their faces were tight, anxious. No one was helping them because no one owed them anything. Word was they found a cramped, overpriced walk-up apartment in the suburbs. No elevator, barely enough space to lie down their suburban exile. Lucas' extracurriculars had to be canceled after defaulting on their mortgage earlier that month. They were already living off credit cards. Heather and Daniel fought more and more. First she blamed him for not stopping his mom. Then came the guilt. My parents did all this for us. And finally, the real venom. You said that house would be ours. Eventually, Daniel said nothing, because when you know the truth but choose to ignore it over and over again, there will come a day when your cowardice demands payment. Once everything was settled, I went to the lake alone. The sun was warm, the breeze gentle. A few ducks glided across the water like nothing had ever happened. I sat on a bench, fingers wrapped around a hot cup of coffee, the other hand resting on the edge of my scarf, an old one, gifted by my late husband, worn thin but still warm. I never really believed I could go through with all of this, not because I lacked the means, but because I never thought I'd find the strife. But once your heart hardens, you realize how much you've been carrying just to keep peace. That wasn't even yours to keep selling wing. That house didn't leave me alone, set me free. Tom had already helped me establish a closed trust, securing my living expenses, health care and long-term care. I even included a donation clause. A portion of my funds would go each year to California's legal aid for women, specifically supporting those denied control over their own finances in marriage and family. I'm not here to rescue Daniel, and I won't waste time trying to punish Heather. I'm here now to support women who actually need it. Life in the community picked up. I joined a few local activity groups, made a friend, Lillian, a fellow widow with a rescue cat named Daisy. We walk together often, and she always says, "I like the way you walk, like you've still got somewhere important to be." And I do. I've started traveling. Nothing extravagant, just train rides to little coastal towns. I bring my sketchbook, paper parasol, take photos, then buy myself a slice of cream cheesecake on the way home. As a reward, I've never lived so simply and never so fully. As for them, I haven't reached out. Sometimes Daniel sends a text, "Mom, we moved. Lucas keeps asking when you'll come see him." And I reply, "I'll visit." I miss him too, as I still love my son. I still love my grandson, but we no longer share the same life. And that's okay. My world is quiet now, finally, undeniably, mine. That evening, I sat on the sofa and opened an old photo album. One picture caught my eye, a younger me holding newborn Daniel in my arms, smiling with a kind of pure, bright hope. I smiled back, lightly tapped the page and whispered, "You did your best. It's okay to let go now." I pulled the blanket over my shoulders as the sunset spilled across the windows like a painting, and I thought, happiness isn't how many people sit beside you, is when you finally stop shrinking yourself to keep the wrong ones close.